In this week's episode of One Piece, the battle between Luffy and Cracker Charlotte continues, and Luffy decides not to use his head in this battle, but to use his stomach, as he quite literally devours Cracker's entire biscuit army. And Sanji gets something of a facial reconstruction surgery. Thanks to the incredible technology of Germa 66 and the usefulness of his sister Reiju, his face is going to look normal for the wedding. But it's only temporary. All that and more in this week's episode of One Piece is what I would be typically saying if I didn't just give away the synopsis of the entire episode. I'm not going to lie, I did not exactly love this week's episode of One Piece, which mostly just amounted to watching Luffy eat Cracker's biscuit army. That being said, this was a very funny and slapsticky episode, and I'm not gonna lie, this week's episode gave me a lot of vibes of watching the original first couple seasons of the One Piece anime series. It didn't take itself too seriously, it wasn't afraid to make a joke, and I can honestly say that this week's episode, the introduction of Munch Luffy, is pretty damned classic. He ranks up there with the greats, just like Afro Luffy, or Nightmare Luffy, or Dressrosa Lucy. He's one of those classic variations of Luffy that you're always going to remember, but only because of how incredibly ridiculous and goofy that he looks. In fact, I would say that Luffy took one hell of a page from Walpole in this episode. You remember Walpole, right? The main villain from Chopper's original arc in the very first half of the One Piece series, who had the ability to pretty much eat everything, and that's what Luffy did in this episode. He thought that if he couldn't beat the army back, well, he could eat them considering that they were made out of delicious cookie-like material. And even Nami was very useful in this episode, using her head, actually deciding to use her climb attack to make it rain so that she could actually soften the armor of Cracker's biscuit army, which allowed Luffy to eat away like a frickin' Pac-Man on drugs. It was actually some surprisingly funny stuff. The problem was that it was just spread a little too thin across the course of an entire episode. For a manga chapter, this type of material is just fine. You can read a One Piece manga chapter in about 3 minutes, no problem. But in a 23-minute anime episode, it just doesn't really work all that much. What I will say is, this was still an entertaining episode. You're definitely going to get some laughs out of it, and they're continuing to build up the big 1-hour special, which is going to be coming our way very soon. But before we get to that, they're also building up the real big battle between Luffy and Cracker. Yes, this has basically all just been an appetizer. It's only a matter of time before things get really serious, and if you look at the preview for the next episode, you're definitely going to see a lot of that material. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? Really, that's all I have to say about this episode. It was funny getting to see Luffy transform into Munch Luffy, which is just a big fat version of himself who eats away at Cracker's biscuit army. And like I said, it's just funny watching him dart all around, elongate his mouth, and swallow so much food to the point where you think that he's actually going to burst. Nami again was resourceful in this episode, and she continues to be really hilarious how she bullies Big Mom's homies with that one Vivre card and that creepy ass look on her face. This is just one of the many instances of Nami being incredibly awesome and badass in this arc, and trust me, it actually gets better with her character as this arc is going to go on. That being said, I think I've spent just a little too much time in the seducing woods and watching Luffy fight against Cracker over the course of the last couple months. Really, I'm ready to see it come to an epic conclusion, and I can't wait to see how they're going to do it in the anime version. The preview for next week looks pretty awesome, and then right after that, we get a big 1-hour special, which unfortunately for anime-only viewers, they do kind of ruin what that actual story is going to be about, but it doesn't diminish my hype for it at all. The animation for it looks awesome. So, funny episode, really goofy, reminded me of the classic One Piece days, but really nothing all that groundbreaking, and basically just more build-up. Which is why I'm going to give this episode a 3 out of 5. a fun, average episode of One Piece, which you should at least watch once. But maybe you think differently than I do. Maybe you thought that this was a perfect episode of One Piece. Well, now it's your turn to sound off in the comments section below. What did you think about this week's episode of One Piece? Did you get a lot of enjoyment out of watching Luffy devour everything in sight? What about Nami continuing to be such a malicious and scary character to the homies? Or Sanji actually getting his face reconstructed with some Germa 66 technology? And what do you hope to see from the future of the Whole Cake Island arc? Thank you all again for watching this short review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things One Piece related. Make sure to share this video with your friends, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. And as always, stay Dandel, baby.